If the military president suddenly ordered a mandatory draft for all men aged 1842, how do you think millennials and Gen Z would respond? It'd be pretty chaotic. Some people would push back right away, some would go along with it out of necessity. Things would get messy. First of all, American companies would go insane. They'd lose a ton of their employees overnight. Bureaucracy would grind to a halt. It took the dude a few years to work out the kinks with Genesis at MEPs, where you do medical and intake. And that was just for regular volunteers who were going to join anyways. Now imagine millions of records all needing waivers. The dude would have to blanket approve waivers and just send people through to basic without an eval. My 41-year-old ass is not going fight a war on the opposite side of the world. I've been to jail. Put me there for the duration of the war as a conscientious objector. But we're more accepting of war after World War II, because that was fought for a good reason, and the people had faith that we would only be sent to war for good reason. But after Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan, the support for that type of war is so low that it would be political suicide for anyone who did it. Nobody trusts the government to start a war for the right reasons anymore, after the 3 absolute quagmires that turned into debacles we put ourselves in. People who support war are either rich, they don't understand what war is really like. The first people to push back would be the military grinning face with sweat. We don't want a draft and can't logistically support it. I'd imagine people would start taking their own mental health seriously and chase diagnosis. America has been able to maintain its empire abroad by minimizing the visibility and impact of its wars to the average person through the use of special forces and expensive air power that many other nations can't compete with. If an admin this historically unpopular tried to institute the draft, it would basically be asking for an overthrow of the US government. Yet I certainly am not going to report in for a draft. I'll dodge, dip, duck, dive, and dodge it with all might. Barring that, I'll start researching the ways that friendly fire is hazardous even in modern warfare amongst the commanding class. This, a serious draft attempt that drastically lowered the requirements so that many are forced in, would be the disaster big enough to do it. Millions of angry young men who think they're going to die if they give in. What a dramatic clusterfuck. There are far too many people that are politically disengaged. They only start to care when it affects them. Sudden drop in 401k post-Liberation Day, illegal ICE deportations, murdering protesters, etc. Once a draft is implemented, it will affect entire swaths of people indiscriminately. There would be rebellion. As well as the usage of the National Guard and Reserve. It was a lesson learned from the Vietnam War. Utilize the reserve and thank them for their service to avoid an unpopular draft. The longest deployment in GWOT conducted by a unit was a National Guard unit. They are eating baby and fucking children, and nothing happened to them yet. Well, they did want to take the US back to the 50s. They should expect the reactions of the 60s. Massive protests mixed with a ton of draft dodging on conscientious objectors. The number of Quakers and the like will probably increase for religious objections. Vietnam had the government work hard to manufacture consent. Trump and his ilk are relying solely on the MAGA faithful, many of whom are starting to waver. Yeah, in Vietnam, there was a solid column of people who could, however erroneously, understand the justification and faithfully trusted the power structure. This time around, when asking for this kind of sacrifice, most don't trust Trump, even his followers. As for Hegseth, do you want a Fox newscaster who hit himself in the nuts with a skateboard on live TV who has an alcohol problem and a messy relationship history, which includes a letter from his own mother about what a trash person he is, as the man leading your sons into war, patent he is not. It's all bluster when it's theoretical, but start forcing young men to go to a war nobody wants right now and send them back dead. It's political suicide. At some point, the volume of people who will not comply will become ungovernable, and you'll have a difficult time with soft noncompliance, and forcing folks to comply will turn the military police into an even more hated version of ICE. It could potentially collapse the military power structure. It only works when those within consent to be governed. That would be a very dangerous game. But I put nothing past this regime for all-out stupidity. Quaker here. That ain't the out you think it is. They'll check to see if you were on the rolls before the draft. There are only like 200k of us left. We're dying out like the Shakers. Regardless, they are yanking immigrants out of immigration court. You think they'll care about conscientious objector status being legal? We're too few to run the underground railroad these days. We'll hide you, we'll lie to cops, we'll die before we let them kidnap you, but that won't be enough if they really want you. Interestingly enough, most of that draft dodging was by upper-income kids. Most blue-collar kids / poor kids went, and that led to a massive class war over the conflict as well, the Hard Hat Riot of 1970. If that happens, doctors in the US would have the chance to do the funniest thing, suddenly finding most men 1842 have bone spurs, rolling on the floor laughing. Most men 18 to 42 are probably too overweight to serve in the military. The draft is just going to ensure that obesity rates rise and McDonald's has a record year, lol. I have like -9 eyesight and a metal rod in a leg. But you better bet my official reason will be bone spurs. Or suddenly everyone would be trans white. My understanding is that doctors in the USA have a special draft that they are required to participate in like in MASH, so they might themselves end up in a field hospital. Pretty crazy. Suddenly there would be a huge racket, with people paying to get disqualifying ailments and psych evals of being incompetent. It takes Congress to do this. The entire House of Representatives is running for re-election in November. There is not a chance of a draft unless the continental US is attacked. It should take Congress to do this, but actually all it takes is no one with enough power willing to stop it. It should take Congress to do many of the things that have already been done, and yet here we are. Plus, there's a mandatory 6-month period between enactment of the law, which would never pass anyway except in some "we're all fucked anyway" scenario, and the first draft happening. It takes Congress to declare war and approve funding. How did that work out? Unless the continental US appears to have been attacked. It only has to look like a foreigner immigrant opposition party member. There is not a chance of a draft unless the continental US is attacked. History does not show that statement to be reliably true. Sit on my lawn with my shotgun. If I'm going to war, the battle will start right here. I'm not fighting for anything but my home and my life, not some billionaire's offshore assets. Right? If you're gonna die in a war anyways, you might as well die fighting your oppressors, instead of who your oppressors want you to fight. 'Tis better to die 'neath an American sky than at Tehran or Kermanshah. I'm with you in spirit, but also talk to your neighbors, find some form of organization, apes together strong and all that. Totally agree. At least with Iraq and Afghanistan, we had the country fired up over 9/11. For this conflict, it really just feels like a "hey guys, watch this" from Trump. For this, there's no fire in our hearts, and if something were to happen on our soil at this point, I think many would conclude that it was a false flag. Red hats to the front of the line. I firmly stand on anyone supportive of any military intervention or action should be forced to serve on the front lines. If it's Israel, Iran, Russia, Ukraine, Taiwan, China. If you are supportive of involvement and it happens off to the front lines, you go. Don't make others fight for causes you believe in but aren't willing to go to battle in. With Rob Schneider leading the charge. Yep, people who are wildly pro-war or MAGA should be right on the front line, in the first wave, with minimal training. No medical excuses allowed or age limit either. If they love their king so much, they should die for him. Hey Baron, you first. Yup, if you supported this, you should be volunteering to go first. They'd be a long queue to get into Canada and Mexico. Mexico might build a wall. It would be deeply ironic for Mexico to actually pay for it and build a wall like Trump said they would, but to keep Americans out of. If I was drafted, the very first thing I would do is flee to Canada. Don't come to Canada, stay home and fix your own *T like you should have during the last election. Thank you very much for watching. Put likes, write comments, and wait for new videos on the channel.